Ya estoy live, baby.
Hi, Gabby.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Do you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
All right. Is the music in the background too loud or are we good?
No, it's good. Perfect.
All right. So I think we're going to wait a little bit for some other people to join in. And I'm waving at people who are already here who are very on the hour.
Right.
And as we talked about, I'll be also recording our interview here, so we have it also as a sound type of thing.
Right.
So how you been, Gabby?
Been pretty good. It's been a little slow today because it's been really rainy and like gloomy the past couple days, so I'm just like a little tired, but you know.
It's also been a little rainy over here, down here. As you know, we're in different time zones and different areas, but hurricanes have been hitting, so of course.
Yeah, I've been seeing that. My aunt lives in Barranquilla, so she's been keeping me updated.
Okay. Just give me a sec because this one is not turning on for some reason. Alrighty. So thank you to everyone who's been joining in. We're here today with Gabby, and Gabby has a very amazing line of work that we here in Drawing Days have been wanting to share with you guys. We're going to be doing this series of interviews every Friday at around this time. So Gabby is our very first guest, and it's a very important step for us to take in order also to share this idea of opening up the art world a little bit more. So it's just 6 right now. I'm going to be speaking a little bit slower than normally because some of the people who are joining in either speak Spanish or other languages. So I'll try to be um, as slow as I can make it. Also, I wanted to know if you guys can hear us fine from the friends of Gabby that also joined in, if the sound is proper and okay, so we can kind of start. I don't know if you guys can hear us just fine. All right. Okay, so the basic layout for our interview is we'll give you some time to do a little bit of an intro of yourself. We also know that you're a little bit camera shy, so we'll try to make it we'll try to make it as gentle as possible. So I'll give you room to introduce yourself, where
Sure.
you're from, how old are you, what type of work do you do, and what you'd like to share with us today.
Of course. So I'm Gabby. If you already know me, you know that, or are tuning in, whatever. I'm a senior at Parsons, the New School, which is located in New York. I'm an illustrator. The work I do is typically sort of like geared towards younger audiences, anything that's sort of like fantasy and like whimsical, and I really like drawing things that come from nature or books or folklore.
All right, so that means that you're going to school to become a professional illustrator, right?
Yeah, I'm in my last year of studies.
And your title will be illustrator.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool. Okay, we don't have anything like that down here, any type of title like that. All right, so how long have you been drawing for?
So it's quite a boring answer, but I've always been very attracted to, painting and drawing, and that's always been the way that I've known how to express myself. And I suppose if we want to get technical about it, I think around middle school is when I started to, started thinking about art as something that I could do professionally because, I wasn't interested in doing anything else. I just like I loved drawing, I loved painting, and I really loved sharing that with people and my love of art with everyone. So where like all my career choices that I had in my head of what I wanted to do have like changed drastically over time, but I always knew that I wanted to, share my passions with people. That's what makes me really happy, especially on a platform like Instagram where, I can talk to people or, like make art that, just connects everybody, especially this year because, everything's so stressful and a mess kind of. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's good to have a sort of like community and I really enjoy being able to provide that for people.
I've seen that, and your Instagram following has started to grow as well. You're
Yeah.
very active, so that's also a good way to keep in touch with people in a different manner, not just showing a pretty dance on TikTok, but making something that will kind of last in time. So, thank you for that. Is there any topic or particular topic or that you'd like to dive into? Any topic that you've been working on for a while?
So I have like little projects like here and there at the moment. I'm just like sort of just like pulling myself out of like a burnout from like the past like couple months because with school, um being I'm in session, having to work and like all these things, it's like so many things to handle at once that I've had to find ways to take a step back and sort of like evaluate my work because I've spread myself so thin and I feel like a lot of people are in that same boat. So it's important to take breaks and you know um, sort of evaluate your mental health and take care of yourself, and that's sort of what I've been trying to do the past like month or so, is just like take care of me for a little bit, sort of like pump the brakes a bit with like some things in life, and that has ultimately made my art better because if you're focusing on so many things at once, then your passions becomes something that's becomes unenjoyable. So it's important to, take steps back, take breaks, like come back to things when you're ready to come back to them. So that's sort of where I'm at this month.
It's good that you talk about mental health as well. I think we take a little bit for granted. And since art and also drawing is something that comes to people naturally sometimes, in your case, like you said, you draw for a while, it's also taken for granted that you need some mental health space, that you're not always creating or being creative. And then taking your steps back also allows you to look at your work in a different from a different perspective, and
Right.
particularly since you're going to school and you have homework, right? And you need to deliver stuff related to illustration, that's also a burden on your creative part. So it's also very important that we take that time in order to evaluate.
Right.
Um,
Like I work from home and I do school from home, and, everything's just like home based for most people right now. So, it's sort of like everything sort of blends into each other. The days sort of blend. So, it's like I've been trying to figure out how to separate my time correctly. So
yeah,
I leave myself space to, give myself a break or, do something that I enjoy that isn't art related, like play video games or like read a book or things like that. You don't always have to be creating content. Your productivity isn't tied to your self worth, and I think that's really important to talk about because I
I
often run
agree
into
with you a lot.
times where I like don't make anything one day, like yesterday, and I just felt so terrible about it because it's just like, oh, like I didn't do anything and it wasn't productive. But at the end of the day, you don't have to be like 100% productive every single day. Like that's just not realistic.
And there's also this sense of always being productive, this idea that we as artists need to be productive all the time, otherwise we're not fulfilling our calling or whatever it is. And I think that you do this, um, since you might be a bit younger, I think that you handle social media so much better. And these days that are pandemic related, we are all a little bit overworked and a bit tired, and the days and nights blend in. So the fact that you have this awareness and that you can create and then give yourself time to be with your dog, spend time with your family, right?
Yeah,
This is important because it also shows throughout your work how you have a life outside the screen and
exactly.
outside what you need to do.
That's what and another thing that I've been trying to like separate myself from is social media because I've like moments where it just gets so overwhelming and like my anxiety gets so bad that I just have to like separate myself from it for a little bit, not think about it, like go outside, take a walk, get some like fresh air. You don't have to be so glued to your social media, your devices, or anything like that. It's just like, even
Yeah,
if it's for like an hour a day, if you can help it, because, we all have different situations in life, but, life isn't about social media and it's not about um, your productivity. That's not your worth. It's about taking care of yourself, especially this year.
and definitely this social media does allow this type of thing where we can see each other through the screen and have a possibility to share. Nonetheless, it's another reality, right? Life is where you are right now, at home with family and things like that.
Mhm.
Do you have techniques or favorite art supplies that you currently use or that you have been using for a while that you'd like to tell us about?
So I wanted to start off with saying that you don't need expensive art supplies to make good art. I feel like there's always a misconception that you need to have the best, most high-end thing available, and that's just not the reality. So for me, for example, I think the only like really like expensive sort of uh, art supply that I use is probably like Windsor New gouache, like little tubes like this, um, which are quite frankly old now because like I have a new gouache set that I use, which is you can find it on Amazon. It's like $20. It's amazing, and I've had it for so long, and it's paint in it, which is Himi gouache. Um,
Okay.
and it kind of comes in like a little package like this, so it's sort of
All
like
right.
self-contained, and then it has the gouache cups inside. Um, and I just like whenever I run out of a color, I just buy one and I just refill it, and that's it.
Okay.
Otherwise, for like my sketching or maybe like lighter pieces, I use like a Paul Rubens watercolor, which just kind of comes like this.
Yep. A smaller type of
Yeah,
carry-on type of case.
yeah, which I really like because it was also just $20, and um, it's the colors in it are really pigmented, really rich, so it's not like it's a very bang for your buck sort of thing, especially for students. If you're looking for something that is on a budget and you get a lot of like quality out of it for what it's
Yep.
worth. That's perfect. That's really all you need.
That's
Especially
a great recommendation. Normally, like you say, we tend to buy the most high end, or we're told that we need to buy, and sometimes with very simple materials, you can create something pretty nice, right?
exactly like I in terms of like brushes and stuff, I'll use them until they're just like completely unusable, or I'll just make my own. Like for example, the other day I just made a quill with a feather that I had. Like I got it off the ground. I just made a little tip with the pen or with the knife, and I just used that on a painting, and that was it. So you really don't need anything fancy. You can always DIY something.
Way to do it because actually quills were before, right? They used to be from birds.
Yeah,
So what you do is you take a cutter and you create this tip, and then it allows you to completely create new pieces and gives that texture that you were showing in your last um, his story on Instagram that I saw.
hmm
So that's a pretty creative and super cheap way to do something that maybe if you can't afford a quill right now, very expensive one, you can just create one.
right, exactly. And the last thing that I use is just it's Dr. P.H. Martin's concentrated watercolor. It's sort of like an ink, and it's sort of like a watercolor. It's very like has a lot of pigment, lots of color, so you can get a lot out of it out of just like
Okay.
this tiny little bottle. And I pretty much put it in everything that I like work on, just because I like to use it as a base or just like for extra texture and things like that.
All right. I'm moving on to my next question is number five. Do you have any recommendations in terms of other artists or artist tips? You just gave us one about the quill. Do you have any other recommendation for people who are either starting or are already on a professional level, but maybe we can share some tips together?
Right. So I think the first one that I thought of this earlier because I ran into this issue myself like a week or so ago, is I had this painting and, I was working on it for hours and hours, and I just like kept getting so frustrated with it, and I kept thinking that I could fix it or something, and I just ended up like ripping it in half essentially because I just like I couldn't stare at it anymore. It's just like it was driving me absolutely insane. Um, and my tip for that is allow yourself to have breaks in between painting. Don't just sit there for like 5 hours and just straight paint. That's just, you need to get your eyes off of what you're working on so that when you come back, you look at it with fresh eyes and you're like, oh, maybe this would have been better, or, I can still continue to do this and that'll improve the painting. And, further with that, because, I destroyed my painting, um, don't completely rule out a concept or a painting that you're working on, because you can always come back to it, because every painting, everything that you make, even if it's like a doodle or a sketch, is a learning opportunity. So don't just like have one painting that didn't really work out and be like, oh, this is crappy, or like whatever. You can always come back to it later with fresh eyes and be like, oh, maybe I can rework this, or so on.
So do you save all your sketches and doodles and things you do and then revisit them later whenever you feel like it's time to work on them?
Yeah, like I've had like concepts and things in like the past where I'm like, maybe I don't feel like I'm in like the place to make it, or like I just don't know how to approach it. Like something that's difficult for me personally is lighting. I typically work with like subject based paintings, so I don't like add a lot of um, lighting to them. Um, but that's part of like what was frustrating me with my other painting that I ended up destroying, is that like I was doing things that were completely different from what I usually do, so I ended up just getting frustrated. But that doesn't mean that the concept or the painting was bad. It's just that I was learning how to like process and how to go about the painting.
And this is also a process of learning about your own way of working and your own path. Not everybody works the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not all uniform type of people. All artists have a different way of approaching, and this practicing that you do every day, drawing and tossing this and coming back to it, allows you also to have a different and refreshed view when you go back to a drawing. I've seen you do some really small sketches, right, in a light type of pencil, and then you go back to them and create a larger piece and a more elaborate piece
Right.
from a little sketch that maybe we would have ruled out,
Mm-hmm.
but it turns out it could work for what you're doing at the moment, right?
Right. Yeah. Like just keep all your doodles. Keep like I'm myself. I'm like it's difficult for me to keep a sketchbook because I just like when I'm a perfectionist, so I see like one like thing that's wrong and I'm like I hate it. But don't get rid of it. Just keep it in there. Flip the page. Forget about it for a little bit. Come back to it and be like, oh, this I could do something with this. And another trick that I learned that I incorporate into my like sketching process and just like early process of my paintings is I hate sketching in pencil because I hate the smudging, and also I can't like I feel like I can't see my lines when I sketch. So I
Getting
work with different colored pencils, like colored sketch pencil. So I do like a red first, and then I go in with like a darker purple so that I can see like the base sketch, and then go over it like I'm almost like I'm doing it with ink, but instead I'm just doing it with a darker pencil. So I can still erase and like rework things.
this is pretty interesting about the smudging. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed, but like I take my sketchbook almost everywhere, so the pages tend to smudge like this. Or I
Together.
paint in my sketchbook too, so sometimes the pencil that I use just smudges and it gets gray almost, and then I look at it and I'm like, this doesn't please
All
me.
right.
Oh,
I thought you were left-handed. This is a problem that us lefties have. Is every time we're drawing or writing or anything, we smudge with our arm, and we
Right.
make it worse. So the
I'm not,
tip about working with a color pencil.
yeah.
All right. Now this is I would say, my most important question of today that I wanted to ask you, and it's, how do you think more sharing spaces or drawing spaces could be created, particularly during this time where there's a whole lot of information going on the internet, and there's everybody's doing lives and everybody's sharing their work, and it's become a little bit of I would say noisy, but we do need some other sharing spaces where we can allow artists like you to have a little bit of a voice and to show and broaden their audience.
So I think this is where I run into like my social media dilemma because on one hand, I don't like to be on it too much, but at the same time, I think we touched upon this earlier where social media can be a really great place to share artwork and things like that, and I think Instagram is definitely that. Out of all like the major apps that people use, Instagram is really great for networking with people and seeing other people's work and having your work seen by other people. Um, so I feel like the a good way of like creating community is reaching out to people who make similar work to you or maybe they're like-minded. You know, just like be human, honestly. Just talk to people, share work, make work that you love. Don't focus on making work just to make it. Like if you are making work to fulfill like a requirement or like a portfolio or something like that, then it's not coming from your soul. So always separate your work artwork from your personal artwork. You can have like your stuff that you show to your clients or people who are hiring you, but have the work that really speaks to you and show that with other people and people who enjoy that sort of thing. Like find your niche and people will come. And you know the best part of Instagram is that I get to talk to so many people, and it's really refreshing when people reply to my stories or anything, and they like a band that I'm listening to, or a place that I've been to, or artwork that I like, and like spinning off conversation about that. It's like it's refreshing. It's nice.
And you're engaging with people who follow you. I've seen that from my part as well, that I wrote to you and you were very very kind, and you take your time to reply, even though with the time schedule and things, but you do connect with this community, and I think that's one of the reasons why you've been growing and people get to know your work a little bit more. Would you like to tell us a little bit about why you're called bruja, or b dot bruja, and because it's a word in Spanish,
Mhm.
which depends on what you like. I'm personally very fond of, but would you like to tell us how you got there to your nickname?
So I made this account when I was maybe like 14. So I've been around
Okay.
quite a while. And, I can't exactly pinpoint why I picked that particular like screen name because, Bruja means witch. And I think that's just something that I liked. And, you know, I just made it my username on the fly. And that's just something that stuck. Like I've tried to sort of rebrand myself over the years and coming up with different names or like making myself sound like more professional, but
Right.
feel like me because I feel like it's like a second name and that's what people know me by. Like some people will talk to me and they'll address me by my username instead of my actual name. So that's just it feels part of my identity now. Like I can't change it.
Yeah. And you, in your profile, you also have a little Colombian flag, and this is where, for the people who are just joining in, we're with Gabby talking about her process and her work. And we're very happy and very glad to have you today. And thank you for taking this invitation. It's very important for us as well to broaden this horizon and to have artists from different parts of the world share their process with us. So Gabby, in her profile on Instagram, she has a little Colombian flag, and if you guys don't know, we're doing this live right from Bogota, capital city of Colombia. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that little flag and how that has also become a little bit of the identity that Bruja has right now?
So I think the main reason that I put it there is just I have sort of like national like appreciation, love for like my country of origin and like my cultural upbringing. It's a beautiful culture, beautiful country, beautiful people, beautiful like values, and that's something that I'm really proud of. And when I was younger, I grew up in lots of neighborhoods that were typically very white. So I felt a bit like outcasted because there were a lot of people with like my cultural background or my heritage, other than like my family that lived nearby. So I had this sort of like disconnect from like my cultural identity to like my normal identity, and you know also like living in America and like in a neighborhood where it was again like mostly white, like it just like I didn't like see myself very much, and I just felt like I don't know, just like I existed. I don't know how to like really articulate it. But as I got older, I found more deeper appreciation for my people and like where I come from and other people with my identity. And with that being said, like I've found other like Latinx artists and creators and like talk to them, and it like makes me feel really whole and very warm because I hope that I can be inspiring to not only just like regular artists, but especially younger like Latin kids who want to, be artists or see themselves in media or in fields that they want to be working in. I think that's really important.
Most definitely. And I think that it's a little sad that we're still a little, I don't want to use whitewash, but in a way, this idea of everything that's foreign, it's better. Of course, if it's American, it's better. You not recognizing your Latin American heritage, particularly if you live abroad, it's also kind of like a lifesaver sometimes because you blend in and you don't have to explain all these things where my mom comes from and my culture and my food and why we speak differently or whatever it is. But now there's a big empowerment related to this artist, and you guys have an important voice to bring to the kids as well, that you can come from wherever, right? And you can also honor that through your work.
Exactly. I think that's really the most important part. I just would like I want people to feel like love and acceptance and just like see themselves in like you know in for art, particularly since I'm an illustrator, like other like Latinx illustrators or artists, fine artists, etc. I think that's really important.
All right. Ahora, para los que se acaban de unir y también están aquí y están pendientes y pacientes, estamos hablando con Gaby. Gaby en este momento, ella vive en los Estados Unidos, es una ilustradora, está en su último año de estudios de ilustración. Les agradezco a quienes no tal vez utilizan el inglés como segundo idioma o no lo hablan muy bien por su paciencia. Yo también prometo que descargaré el video y trataré de ponerle unos subtítulos de manera que este también sea mucho más amplio para todos. And since we're working on the part of the introduction, we'd like also to give you some time, that's the important part, for you to share about your work. What do you do? What type of illustrations you have or you're working on? And anything that you'd like to share with us at this point is more than welcome. So I'll leave you to share with us what you have or what you'd like to just show today.
So, okay, I guess this is the part where it would be beneficial to.
We're going to turn this a little bit around, so because
Yep.
she's prepared and she has her tripod ready,
I'll go.
she's going to show us a little bit about her process.
If I can get the tripod on, that is. Ooh. I've been having a little issue with this.
I think right here I think fine. Let's focus.
Okay,
Forward.
perfect. So the first thing I want to share is like just like my general process because I get a lot of questions on it. So obviously everything starts in the sketchbook. Um,
And this is all analog work.
yeah, this is just my like regular like painting sketchbook. I like to keep it a bit like scrapbooky, if that makes sense. So I just like paste things that like I find interesting, or if I want to cover up a sketch that I maybe I'm not pleased with, I'll just like put a different sketch on top of it. I keep it really rough and unrefined for the
Okay.
most part because I that's really the most important part of keeping a sketchbook is don't make it perfect because if you're making it perfect then you're defeating the purpose of why you're keeping it. It's basically like a visual diary of just like thought process, like things you want to explore, like color palettes and painting. So here's like just a couple of things that I've been working on here and there. This is for my thesis for my final year, so this is just exploration for that. So I tend to keep it very loose, and here again it's like half painted and half unfinished, which is fine because that's how it's supposed to be. It's just supposed to be practice or just
Okay.
exploring a concept.
And it's also interesting to see the size, the actual size of the sketches that you're doing. Normally, when we see them on the screen, we're not very sure about the size. But right now, it's very interesting to see that they're actually quite small because they can fit into your sketchbook and
Right.
very, very detailed.
Yeah, so this is again where I was talking about like doing things with a red pencil first and a darker pencil over it because I don't like graphite. So this is the way I work. It's almost like my brain is sort of wants me to work in layers. So doing things in layers helps me figure out like the placement of things much better. Or just like slapping on like some colors just so I have a general idea. I don't really when I get to my painting, I don't unless it's something for a client, um I or for school, I don't really go in with a definite color palette. I just sort of go in with whatever I think it's might suit it or like proper or just like the mood. So with these rats, for example, I already have this posted on my feed. I
Yeah.
just like put some like greenish yellowy color like over it. The reference picture of these like mice were white, so I tried to think of like a color that would complement that while going with the general aesthetic of how I paint. And I just kind of went with the flow, which is typically how I like to go with things because I think for me personally, if I give myself too much restriction and too many steps, then I just get bored. I'm very like on the spot. I like to get things done in like a couple days.
Yeah.
If it's like a personal project, because I just like to churn it out basically.
And this also helps you to have a little bit of a color swatch of what
Uh,
would
yeah,
be.
sometimes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
trying to adjust this light. Okay. Yeah, so like I have like like typical colors that I tend to go with. So my palettes are normally sort of like muted and like sickly colors, like these like greens and like this sort of like bluish greenish color. I like nighttime colors or anything that sort of just, like has like a whimsical feeling to it generally is what I'll
Yeah.
go with. Lately, I've been trying to experiment and get out of my general comfort zone with color because color is the thing that I struggle with diversifying in my palette. So I used to work very desaturated and very muted, but I eventually got bored of that um, because once you like make every painting just like look the same with the same colors, it just like gets old.
It's been evolving in that way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you are making like paintings and like work, your work is always going to naturally evolve to, show the practice and the things that you're learning. And, when you look at all your paintings side by side, you can reflect on like where, you're shifting your techniques and your colors and your anatomy like anatomy, that used to be something that I really struggled with. And, you
All
know,
right.
I think there's a discourse with reference pictures in the art community for some reason. But, you know, don't be shy of using reference pictures because reference pictures can help you a lot. Take your own reference pictures. Like if you need a pose, just take a picture of yourself and, you know, trace it or whatever's going to help you figure out how to, you know, tackle an issue visually. Just go for it.
That's also a really good point, and a really good tip in terms of how to develop what you're looking for in a better way. If you need to do a specific pose that you can't find, that you can't seem to find online, of course, you can also take a photo reference of yourself and do it. Maybe sometimes we're a little scared to do it, if we have some body shaming problems, right?
Mhm.
But it's all about the structure and about the figure and about the pose and the general idea that you'd like to convey with this drawing or this particular character.
Exactly. Just, you know, generally just don't be shy of using reference. Reference is completely fine. Everyone uses reference, even professionals, you know. I no, you know, I don't have like a mouse with me so that I could pose it like this. I have to look at
Yeah.
lots of reference to be like, okay, this is how the head would be positioned, or this is how the body would turn, or this is how like these wings would look, which obviously I had to look up separately,
Yeah.
um, and things like that. So, you know, always like I like to have a folder um like on my desktop of like if I find a pose that's interesting, maybe I'm not working on a painting for that pose, but I'm like, oh, I could come back to that for something. I'll just save it. I'll title it from the origin of where I got it from. So for example,
Yeah.
if I have a mouse and I find it on Pinterest, I'll be like Pinterest mouse, and I'll save it in a folder and I'll look at it later.
All right. After you have the idea sketched out, and or you have some sort of layout of what you'd like to do, then you go right to digital, or do you develop the idea in the analog process and then you go to the digital?
So I basically just go straight into painting. I paint on an illustration board, which is essentially kind of like a mounted paper, which gives a lot of sort of, I guess, ability to do what you want with it. It takes a lot of abuse. So especially
Yeah.
with gouache and watercolors and things like that, you can see like here, like it's very sturdy, very bendy. So I usually go in with like a light wash of like an undertone. I usually like to do like yellows and browns. So I did like a sepia under this.
Yep.
Um, and then just like sort of went on top of it and painted. I like to thin my gouache personally. Um, because again, I'm like more typically like a watercolorist. I don't like work very flat, and I really like being able to show all like the texture and the strokes and the you know, I with these details, for example, I did with pencil instead of a brush, so you have like a variation of things that you're looking at, so it's not just the ink or just the paint. um and then after that, you know, with this painting it looks rather unfinished and like light, I suppose, which is what I had like a little struggle with because I was trying to pull out like these blue tones out of this painting, and you know, I just couldn't figure it out with the paint. So I took it into Procreate, which is what I use personally, and was able to bring out like these blues with like just adjusting the brightness and the saturation and things like that. Um, and sort of going in and fixing some of these details to bring out the snout, some of these
Yep.
stars, like the trees and things like that. And then that really leaves me with the finished product. So I kind of do like a half and half.
All right. And it does change a lot, quite a lot, with bringing out those blues. Like you say, the contrast is completely different. And of course, you get to see a more detailed, more defined type of illustration right there. That helps quite a lot.
Right. Like I personally I struggle with digital art. So as of like the past like couple of years, I sort of like have figured out how to like do like sort of like mostly analog with my paintings and just like going with the flow. Because I feel like with digital art, it's hard to sort of like get that like those um mistakes that look good, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
unintentional things that happen in painting, because painting is unpredictable. You don't know where it's going to take you. Whereas with digital, you can really fine tune everything. So I like to leave my digital editing and like work typically just for the very end. So, if I'm looking at another painting, um, or if I'm working on something and it's not working traditionally, I'll just take it in to Procreate and just like do a little tweak. So, for example, I drew this one last year
Yeah.
and around October, and I was tweaking it to like like give it a nice update. So here it like looks quite boring, I suppose. It's not up to like my standard now, but I did like a quick tweak on it and it looks much better. Like I added much more texture to the background. I pulled out some colors and gave it like a yellowy, bleachy look. Detailed these windows a little better. Give it just generally more texture, which made the painting more salvageable for me.
So for the digital part, you mainly use Procreate, right?
Yes,
For editing
I
and adding this
uh,
details.
yeah, like you can basically use whatever you want. Like if Photoshop is more your thing, then you should do that, or whatever. But I've always been a very analog person. I've always painted, and I didn't really start digital art until I was in college.
Okay.
So, the part that I really liked about Procreate is that it felt natural to transition into because you just pick up the pen and you can look at what you're doing, and I have like presets for like some of my brushes like here that give it a more like natural texture and look, and I found that difficult to get out of Photoshop, especially with working on a tablet, which just it didn't feel natural to me. So and sort of there was a delay with the pen, the tablet, then seeing it on the screen, which would always annoy me so much. So Procreate was a really good investment for um, my transition into figuring
And
out how to blend digital
and
work with traditional
contact,
work.
yeah, and the direct contact as well with the screen because it also relates to the work that we do in analog work that we do. We're more used to the texture and touching the paper or whatever it is that we're working on. So of
Right.
course, working with a digital pen directly on the screen is going to give you a more kind of more familiar feeling of what you did before.
Right, exactly. I'm trying to find an example of something that I haven't finished.
Yeah. And I love
Oh,
that you have all these little projects there that we can see that you're actually currently working on a lot of things, or
mhm.
you have just waiting for the right time, but there's a lot of visual information right there.
Right. So like with this painting, for example, this is like not done at all. But if I just like remove this layer, you can see like how the painting looked normally, and it looks, quite unrefined, unfinished. But with
Yeah.
the brushes that I, use and the presets, I could clean it up so it looks much like, more crisp.
Yeah.
Also, I don't have a scanner at home because I'm not in school, so I don't have access to one. So I just take pictures with my phone, which sometimes comes with its own issues with like
Yeah.
the
Quality.
resolution and things like that. So this is a process that has helped sort of like bring out the things that get blurry when you're scanning it, or you know taking a picture or whatever it is you do to sort of like import your work.
So that's pretty cool to also see that you take a regular type of photo with your phone and then you can tweak it and just make it work through the digital app. Of course, is another way to go around it, and you don't have to have, for example, a scanner at hand. You can also take a regular picture and just work on it.
Exactly. I again, like I'm a person on a budget. I'm a student. I'm right there with everyone else who's a student or at home or doesn't have the resources to you know uh do all like these like little fancy things here and there. So it's mostly about getting creative with what you have, and
Yeah.
things like that. That's really the bigger part of the process is if you are lacking in something, figure out like the best way to substitute it or what have you.
make it work for yourself with whatever you have at hand, right?
Exactly. That's, something that my mom would always tell me. Like, if you don't have something, just like figure it out. There's always a way. You don't need anything fancy. Um, things like that. Here's another one where this is what the painting originally looked like. It didn't even have a
Okay.
face.
Yep.
And then I just did a couple layers, a little adjustment, gave like these like nice purple hues because I couldn't get this traditionally because it just like whenever I take the picture it wouldn't like show up. So I just decided to crisp it up like digitally, and the end product turned out a lot better.
And by adding these little textures, of course, it makes it look more finished and gives it that level up type of thing.
Exactly. Like I get a lot of comments on like the textures that I do use, and I think texture is, whether or not you work with gouache that's really flat or acrylic or oils or pastels, having like a variation in the textures gives a lot of life to your painting. If you work in only like one level of color or texture, or what if you know it gives a lot more like oomph to it, if that makes sense, and as opposed to just like doing everything just one specific way. So that's why I worked very mixed media, because it gives me a lot to work with instead of just
Yep.
using one particular medium.
So you'd call your work, if you had to name it or pinpoint it at some type of technique, you'd say it's mixed media, right?
Very mixed media. I
Very
never,
mixed.
if you ever see anything that I make, unless it's a sketch, there's always going to be like 10 other things that are involved in the process of making it, because where if I'm stuck in the painting, I'll just be like, you know what, I'll just put it into digital format and I'll fix it, and
Yep.
then it turns out better. You just, it's a learning process, so you always figure it out, you figure out the solution.
And that's exactly where the digital comes in handy, right? Because it helps you perfect this process or make it a little bit better, or fix things, or give it that glow and that finished look that you're looking for. So this is a good way of also approaching it, with the analog and the digital part coming together, right?
Exactly, yep.
Yeah. And since you're going to school for illustration, do you have subjects that are particularly digital and subjects that are particularly analog?
So in the beginning of my schooling, I had like very specific classes where I could only do digital work or I could only do painting or things like that. So while I think that I struggled in that because, again, I work very mixed media, so I problem solve a lot when I can't figure something out. And that was more particularly with um digital art, because digital, especially like when Procreate sort of just came out, the brushes were limited and things like that. So you know I couldn't do much in the way of um you know mixing my techniques here and there, because I had to rely on just doing, fulfilling the assignment, um
Yep,
and things like that.
delivering
But
the moment.
as I progress in school, I don't have like those classes anymore, so I'm free to do what I want. Just I just have to fulfill like the general prompt of the assignment. So for example, this I made I don't even remember, like maybe like 2018. Um,
Okay.
and it was just like a random like assignment interior, but I learned about lighting and like things like that. Um,
You had to take into
or
account the window lighting that was there, of course, and that's another story.
Exactly, yeah, like again with like the reference, I wouldn't have ever been able to figure out how to create like sort of believable lighting if I didn't like look at pictures beforehand or have like things on hand to look back at, to make sure that while this illustration is like really you know stylized, it still has like a sense of realism to it because it has lighting and it has atmosphere.
Yep. So
But
you're
again, this is like
mixing
very old,
everything together.
as opposed to like let's see, something like this that is the mix between um sort of like the analog and then the digital editing. So if I just do this real quick. this is like what the base painting looked
Yep.
like. So I got most of it done. You can see like here, like I couldn't get the color to come out, and I forget things all the time. Like when you're doing your watercolors, you do your lights to your darks, and then I just started doing the darks first. So I sort of like messed up my own process. So I was like, oh crap. But we can take it digitally and then fix it and add the lighting and the atmosphere, or like the atmosphere on this moon, for example, like things like that.
All right, Gabby. So I also told you a little bit about how we have some quick, think fast, answer fast type of questions. And for this, I've created some visual aid as well for people at home who probably don't speak English as well, or are just very tired of my face. So I'm going to help them a little bit with that. So I'll go with this. You can say yes or no. Eraser, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I have a two type of option. Cutter or pencil sharpener?
Pencil sharpener. I'm really.
Really?
I couldn't use a cutter. I would definitely
All
like
right.
stab myself.
You're on my team because normally artists use a cutter for sharpening, but I
I,
like this guy. I don't know. Alrighty. So we have pencil or mechanical pencil.
Mechanical pencil.
Mechanical
100.
pencil. Right. This is Gabby's choice, right? You also told us this before, but sketchbook or no sketchbook?
Sketchbook, absolutely 100%.
Yeah, sketchbook is a really great tool, you guys. And if you guys are logged and any of my students are here, I encourage them completely to be sharing and to be working on their sketchbook. I'm not very good at it either. I have too many not completed. I want them to be perfect, right? But for Gabby, this is sketchbook. All right, we have, I like this one because it's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Analog or digital?
Analog, I have to say.
Analog.
Just because,
Yay.
most solely for the fact that I just use my digital for my editing, so I couldn't just do a full digital painting. It would drive me insane.
Yep, agreed. All right, we're gonna go with small or big?
Big.
Big.
I get really detailed, so I really need that tip to be very sharp.
To be almost a weapon.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. All right. Black and white or color?
Color.
Color.
Yes, I used to, in high school, I would almost exclusively work in black and white with like maybe one accent color, and I just got bored. So, I, as much as my palette is usually like muted and dark, color.
And you're definitely not afraid of color. We've seen, if you guys haven't checked Gabby's Instagram or webpage, please go because you'll be amazed of she has a really broad range of things that she works on. Now we're doing references or no references.
References, always. I always have it up on my laptop. Like I have it like right here, and then I have my painting here. So if I'm looking at doing a painting and I need to look at the references or whatever, I'll just look at my screen.
So yes, references. All right. While you're working, music or no music?
Music, I am very distractible. So I need something to tune me in, so that everything else just becomes a noise and I'm only focused on the music and the painting. Or
And
if
do you usually have your playlist for working, playlist for painting, playlist for whatever it is?
I exclusively take time out of my week, like every like couple days, or once a week or whatever, to like make a playlist, or like discover new music, so that I'm not always like listening to the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Because I love listening to music and I love discovering like new things to listen to. So I always like add it into my playlist so I have like a nice variation.
All right. And you've shared some of your playlists before or tracks that you like also on your Instagram story. So that's also a good way for people who want to get to know the artist. Guys, check out what the artist listens to. What type of music do they like? What style of clothing do they wear? This gives you an idea of what type of person the artist is and why they create what they create, right? And last but not least, daytime for working or nighttime for working?
Nighttime. I'm a complete night owl, 100%. It's almost like my clock, my internal clock is just switched. So, during the day, I just like, all I want to do is sleep or watch a show, have lunch, whatever. At night,
Yep.
let's get to work. Let's see what we got to do, what's going on.
And do you usually struggle a little bit with the schedule when you have to deliver things for the uni and then you've been up all night because, of course, you're a night owl, so you'll be drawing until 3 a.m. and then you're behind on work.
Yeah, I have one class on Wednesdays that's at 8:30 in the morning. I'm not a morning person, as you can imagine, because I'm up all night. So I'll stay up until like 2 or 3 a.m., like working or doing homework, and then I'll have to be up in a couple hours, and I'm just a complete zombie.
I really do that.
Coffee to wake up. It's ridiculous.
Oh, so you're a coffee drinker.
Big coffee drinker. I'm trying into drinking more tea so that I'm not having so much coffee. It doesn't do it. And I love coffee, so.
And it's in your blood, and you can't deny it. I mean, I've tried. I'm a tea person as well, but if you offer me a big cup of coffee, I'm taking it. And
Exactly.
it's a helper when
Yeah.
you're not a morning person.
It's
So these
the
are
fact.
routine
Yeah.
quick questions. It's very interesting for me to find out that, for example, you do use the pencil sharpener. This is kid's best friend, but as we grow older and we're told we're serious artists, we should be using a cutter, for example. So, of course, seeing that you have your ways and your perks, that's also very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any final tips, recommendations, comments that you'd like to share with the people who are right now online and the people who see that our video later?
I think maybe my final tip is I get a lot of questions regarding my stylization of my work, and where I get my inspiration from, and like things like that. And the number one thing that I've learned over the years is you can always like have, for example, artists on Instagram, like people that you admire, that you like the style of, and you want to incorporate it into your own work. I would advise to dig deeper into the things that you like. So, for example, I tend to work with like a sort of like cutesy, like gothic style, but
Yeah.
my interests in fine art lie in like medieval manuscripts and Art Nouveau and things like that are very decorative, which is where I drew a lot of my early inspiration from when I started painting more seriously. So look at the old masters, study, art history and people who came before. It's going to be really beneficial to the work that you make, because you can read books about Pablo Picasso, if that's someone that you're interested in, and his process or his paintings, or you can go to the museum and see the paintings in person, although that's difficult right now, but in general. So yeah, just study old masters, study older artwork, dig deeper into the things that speak to you. So if you're into Gothic art, for example, like me, ask yourself, like, why do I like that? And do lots of research, because art is not only about the visual but also about your research.
And of course, it's a reflection of who you are as a person. So sometimes I think we forget about that. And this connection of who you are as Gaby is showing through your work. You're just giving it a different type of medium to speak for you, right? So this is a visual way of showing who Gaby is and what Gaby likes and who she is on the inside. And of course, we can have very much love for artists or other creators, but we also need to do the work of getting to know ourselves before or during the process and creating something that is true, that is not a copy of somebody else or that is not trying to please everybody else, right?
Yeah,
And you
art
as
to
a
other
student.
people, make art to please yourself, especially like in times like these are difficult. We might be disconnected from our families, or whatever thing that you might be having going on in your life. Don't always give yourself space to explore your passions, or read books that you like, or get inspired, like things like that. Those are things that are really important now.
because it's not only the visual part, right? We also have some other influences. So when you say read a book that you like, this can also give you some imagery to work on, or a song that you like, or a favorite movie or something. So there's a lot of things, a lot of ways or a lot of places where we can take our references and make or turn them into something else.
Hmm?
Okay, I have this final question. What's your favorite pencil? Of course, we already know that you don't like graphite, but which would be the one that you go to? Well, particularly like graphite, but which is the one that you go to or you'd go to for sketching?
So I use it's Kohl Erase. I forget what the brand is. It might be Prismacolor.
All
It
right.
typically has an eraser, but this one fell off. But this one's in the color Tuscan Red, which is my absolute favorite color to sketch with. It's just like it's pretty. It's it's dark enough that I can see like what I'm working on, but it's not too dark where it's like completely black. I,
Yeah.
I tend to like work very multicolored with my sketching, so whatever sort of like has like a nice pigment to it that's like sort of unique and sort of matches the color palette of like how I paint, perfect by me. But especially the kohl erase because you can erase the colored pencil. So
Yeah. So if you guys didn't know that, you can actually sketch using a red pencil or a blue pencil, and that gives you a whole other set of possibilities in terms of erasing it or how it's going to turn out later. So for Gabby, it's for red Prismacolor, I think,
mhm.
type of. Would you like to share with us your social network, your webpage, your contact info, and anything else that might put people in contact with you? I'm going to do that in Spanish as well for the people who are there. Si hay alguno de ustedes de los que están conectados que quiere conectar con Gaby, quiere conocer mejor su trabajo, quisiera enterarse un poco más de cómo trabaja ella, cuáles serían sus tarifas para comisiones y demás, pueden ver las redes sociales de Gaby para que puedan conocer un poco mejor su trabajo. Ella nos va a compartir un poco de esto. So, go right ahead.
All right, so this is my only form of like art social media, so it's just b.ruja, um, Bruja, and my website is just gabyverdooren.com.
Verdooren is the way you pronounce it, yeah? All right, so as soon as I post this IGTV video, I'll make sure to link everything and the information about Gaby down below so you guys can visit her, get to know her. She's super nice, super friendly. I would totally advise talking to her a little bit more. Sometimes we tend to be a little intimidated by artists and their work, and you see that this person has a somewhat number of followers. So of course this person's not gonna reply to my message, and sometimes we're mistaken. So that's the case right here. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today, Gaby, before we close it up?
I think that's it for. I think that's it.
All right, so I really appreciate you being here, being super sweet and super patient and answering all our questions, taking time to answer our this and that type of questions as well. Thank you to everybody who joined in, who were kind enough to give us a shot today. And we'll be, of course, linking the video right there. Remember to go follow Gaby and get to know her better. Para todos los que se conectaron y estuvieron pendientes de este live con Gaby, muchísimas gracias por creer en Drawing Days. Los invito a cuando postee el video voy a linkear toda la información de Gaby, su página, su Instagram, y ella tiene pues, are your commissions open right now or are they closed?
Closed for the moment, but I will be opening my Etsy very soon.
Alright. Ella va a volver también a abrir su tienda de Etsy, que es una tienda que vende de manera internacional muy pronto, así que toda nuestra buena energía para los que se conectaron el día de hoy. Thank you so much, Gaby.
Thank
A
you.
lot of good energy for you and your projects, and muchísimas gracias para todos. Nos vemos en el próximo viernes y en el próximo live. See you next Friday, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.